Hi everyone, in this video we learn how to calculate a fraction of a number. And to do so, we're going to work through the two examples that we see here. The first of which, we need to calculate 2/3 of 120. But rather than just showing you how to calculate 2/3 of 120, I want to make sure that everyone watching this actually understands what we're being asked for when we have to calculate 2/3 of something. And for that, I'm going to use the space that we have at the top here to get a good visual understanding of what 2/3 of something means. Let's say I had a cake, and I told you you could eat 2/3 of it. In other words, let's say I told you you could have 2/3 of a cake, and I'll just quickly draw one here. I got a cake right here. There we go. And when I say you can get 2/3 of that cake, that means that if you were to cut this cake into 3 equal parts, you can get 2 of them. So let's see if I actually draw that. So I'd have the middle of the cake somewhere here. And so I'd have one slice there and 2 other slices there. And so 2/3 of that cake, well, that would be equal to 2 of these 3 equal slices. And that would look like this. And in the same way that you probably have no trouble understanding that 2/3 of this cake is equal to this, I want to make sure that you can calculate 2/3 of 120, and in fact, a fraction of any number, thinking of it in the same way. And for that, it's worth breaking up the thinking process that we use to find 2/3 of this cake. And here's the whole idea. The denominator, 3, tells us how many pieces we need to split our cake into. In other words, it tells us the number of equal parts we need to split the cake into. So I'll just say number of equal parts. Equal parts. There we go. The numerator, on the other hand, tells us how many parts we actually take. So I'll just write number of parts we take. Done. Okay, so let's see how that works for 2/3 of 120. So I'll just write that here. That's 2/3 of 120. Well, just as for the cake, this 3 on the denominator tells us that we need to split 120 into 3 equal parts. And to figure out how big each of those parts would be, we divide 120 by 3. And I'll do that on the side here. We have to calculate 120 divided by 3. And 120 divided by 3, well, that's equal to 40. So when we split 120 into 3 equal parts, we're splitting 120 into 40, 40, and 40. Remember, that's what the denominator told us. Now looking at the numerator, which is 2, that's telling us to take 2 of these. And taking 2 of them means we're taking 2 times 40. And that's equal to 80. And we're done. 2/3 of 120 is equal to 80. Alright, so that's what 2/3 of 120 actually means. But going through this entire process each time would be rather long. And luckily for us, there's a nice and quick way to calculate this. And here it is. When we write 2/3 of 120, in mathematics, it means 2/3 times 120. And to calculate this directly, without going through all the steps we did before, just remember that the 3 on the denominator tells us how many equal parts we need to split 120 into. The 2 on the numerator tells us how many of those parts we need to take. And here's how to do that. We can state that this equals to 2 times 120 over 3. What this is now saying is divide 120 by 3, and that's how big each of the 3 pieces will be, and then take 2 of them. Now we saw earlier on that 120 divided by 3, well, that's equal to 40. In other words, each of the 3 equal pieces we split 120 into equals to 40. And this 2 just tells us how many to take. So that's equal to 2 times 40, and that's equal to 80. And that's exactly the same answer as the one we found before. Now let's use the same method as we did here to work through this second example. We need to calculate 3/5 of 70. Well, using what we've just seen, we can go ahead and state that 3/5 of 70 is equal to 3 over 5 times 70. Now remember, The denominator 5 is telling us how many equal pieces we need to split 70 into. The numerator 3 is telling us how many we take. And to figure out how big each of the pieces is, well, we divide 70 by 5. And so we write this as 3 times 70 over 5. Now remember, 70 over 5 just means 70 divided by 5. And by all means check, but 70 divided by 5 is equal to 14. So this is equal to 3 times 14. Finally, we need to multiply this 14 by 3, and in doing so, we find that that's equal to 42. And that's the final answer. And so that's how to calculate a fraction of a number. And that's it for this tutorial.